Welcome to Armchair Expert. I'm Dax Shepard. I'm joined by my friend Monica Padman.
Hello.
Boy, oh boy, do we have a tall guest today.
Tall drink of water.
A real tall slurp of water, and a muscular slurp at that.
Oh, yeah, thick water.
Yeah, I don't think people realize when they see Joel McHale on the television set or on a billboard on the side of the road just how beastly he is.
He really is.
He's gigantic, right? Mm-hmm. Not just in his height. He's very...
in his heart.
Broad. He has a big, swole heart. But he's very broad and dense. He's quite muscular, and it's really overwhelming in person and intimidating. Yet, despite that, we were able to have a really lovely conversation. I assume you know Joel from the previous show he was on, Soup, and he was also on Community. He has a new show on Netflix that I just so I was just visiting my mom for 6 days in rather unfortunate circumstances, and I plowed through 7 episodes of his show.
You did?
The Joel McHale Show with Joel McHale, which of course is a great title.
Best name.
And goddamn is that show watchable. Oh, I was putting them back like Doritos or Oreos
great.
dipped in milk. Yeah, it was. It's really, really funny. And it moves at quite a clip.
And both you and your lovely wife have been on that show.
We've both been on that show. In fact, last Friday, I filmed a little bit that will air. I'm not even certain when. But throughout the years, we've always been social with Joel. We've teamed up on trying to get someone elected to school board superintendent. He's very philanthropic. And we get a call from him quite often. And he gets a call from us quite often. And he's a very dependable gentleman. And I really enjoyed talking to them. He was so well read. That was not that I didn't expect it, but just holy smokes, he read a lot, you know?
Do you think the show also could have been called The Joel Show?
Yeah, I think that if I had named it and pronounced it, it'd be called The Joel Show, starring Joel McHale. So please enjoy Joel McHale, my tall, robust, muscular, handsome, kind, well-read guest.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
I remember when a man was taking a shit in my house. in a tub.
Joel McHale, welcome to the Armchair Expert.
I can't believe I'm here.
Thank you so much for...
Why don't you go ahead and have a Nicorette?
I'm going to pop in several Nicorettes because I want to match your energy, and I know you have spectacular energy.
That
reserves.
is true, but that's from my cocaine tablets.
Oh, you have cocaine tablets.
Yes, they dissolve.
That was Stevie Ray Vaughan's thing. Do you know that about him?
No.
He didn't snort it. He put it in his whiskey. He drank it, and everything was going honky-dory, and then all of a sudden his stomach rotted out.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That'll do it.
It seemed like a hack, though. Like a cocaine hack so that your nose would stay...
Right. But
I mean, a guy was a singer, right? He had to...
Yeah, and you still are putting cocaine in your body. So,
But if there is a safe way to do it, then what's the issue?
I wonder if because I know that, is it true that former cocaine users, if they were heavy cocaine users, typically they have, well, yes, they with the dildo with the glycerin. No, but they have heart problems.
Coke users?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Former
So
Coke
in
users.
fact, I have been to a cardiologist. As you know,
I didn't know you.
You don't know I'm an ex-Coke addict?
I knew that you were a drinker.
Yeah.
But I didn't know you were a Coke addict.
Well, I found that drinking
I
was...
never met you during that time. That was before I was on basic cable.
I was not. Well, yeah, I had about a year of having some success and still being an addict.
So how's your heart?
Well, so I went to a cardiologist, and I guess what can happen, I'm sure there's more extensive damage that can happen, but the circuitry between your brain and your heart can get a little dicey.
And how's yours?
Well, I just want to tell everyone what just happened because they won't know that you just flipped off Rob, our producer, who's a very kind person.
What's he gonna
He's
do?
from a Chicago suburb.
Oh, Naperville? My dad is from Chicago, and he said Naperville was just farmland. And now it's like this huge town.
Metropolis.
With great high schools. I don't understand.
Have you read Devil in the White City?
Yes.
Isn't that great?
It is so good. And I would love to. I know that there was like Leonardo DiCaprio is going to play him and all that. And I was like, you should really not make it a movie. You should make it a 8-part series.
You're so right.
There's very few books that can do two subjects at once.
So the book tells two stories: the history of the Chicago World Fair in the 1890s or something, right?
The white, yes, it was called the White City. Yeah, and there's still a few remnants of it today.
And it was the World Fair that immediately followed the unveiling of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. So that the stakes were incredibly high that they had to do something spectacular.
They didn't know what to do, and at the time, they had about a year to build it.
Right.
And they had to deal with Chicago winters where they're like, I don't know how to get through the soil here.
Right.
These were the same guys that figured out how to put tall buildings in downtown Chicago.
Well, to me, that's the third element of that book, which is so fascinating, is that the early architecture of skyscrapers.
Yes.
Because they were born in Chicago, not New York.
And everyone thought, well, because the ground in Chicago was impossible because you had to make this huge foundation to build these huge buildings, and Chicago did not have
bedrock,
the land to secure it. So they figured out how to float these buildings.
Yeah.
So all the buildings in downtown Chicago are literally floating, but they're just counterbalanced.
Also, they're just the fact. You know what I liked about that book too?
Well, and then they would describe the parties they would throw when this fair was going, and they would go like, well, we brought in 4 elephants and butchered those, and then 90 Moroccan soldiers. I mean, I was like, what? It was crazy.
I liked it too, just because it gave me a ton of gratitude for the time we live in, because you don't realize what it was like to live in a city that heated all the buildings with coal and provided light with oil lamps or gas lamps. Like the whole city was sooty. Everyone was coughing. Everyone had fucking black lung. And then the other thing you realize too is that I'll call him the protagonist in this book. He's a murderer.
Let's go with antagonist.
But isn't he our hero? I guess maybe.
No, he was not my hero. What's wrong with you? You're a terrible human being. What did you read? Did you read the Black Dahlia and go like, gosh, this guy's doing great?
I don't know. We learn about him first, so he just kind of, I don't know. Muscle memory told me he was our hero. But at any rate, he would just show up and assume people's identity. He'd be like, "Oh, I'm their son. The people who own the pharmacy, I'm their son. Don't worry about me." And there's no way to prove who you are back then.
No.
And then he's just killing people, and then he's writing letters to their family going, "Hey, move to California." And then there's no way to find out if they moved to California because you can't call them.
Yeah.
You can't even write a letter. It's got to fucking go through Panama and shit. It'd be a year before. Yeah.
He would marry people, take their property, or he'd kill them and then have their property and sell that. And
he moved above, if I remember this correctly, he moved above a pharmacy just as a renter, and then killed both the people who owned the pharmacy and just assumed ownership of it.
Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, they're gone. They're
in California. Everyone moved to California."
And that's your hero.
He's my hero.
That's his hero. Yeah. He's got a poster behind him.
Great book, though. Great book.
It really, and that author, Larson, his last name is Larson, from Seattle, Washington. He's written a number of great books. And the fact they can gather that stuff together and put it into a narrative, I'm just like, those people are 150 times smarter than me.
Oh, absolutely.
I read this book called Dark Matter and the Dinosaurs, which is a science book, and I was so bad at science. And then I heard the woman interview. I'm like, she might be able to make it make sense to me.
Through, yeah.
And I read it, and I can't read. I just listen to everything. But, but I was like, all these crazy concepts, like, she broke them down for me. And I was like, if this was the way I could have accessed something like science.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's not unlike our job, which is it requires a very bizarre combination of things, right?
Yeah, but I'm confused by your job because this house we're in is a piece of shit.
Yeah, well,
I mean, what do you do all day?
Listen, we're going to get to my house and the fact that you had to wade through mud to get up here today.
It looks like their house was attacked, you guys.
Yeah, it definitely. Yeah.
Wait, no, but I think you're right in that actors do tend
You would just think, oh, you need to be good at acting. Well, that's not true. Yeah. You have to kind of be an entrepreneur and you have to be a self-starter. There's no like manual to how to do it. And so I'm sure the best actors of all time never ever acted because it required this other weird skill set, which is like self-promotion and showing up.
Absolutely.
And all this.
Or you could say they realize they're only, if they're actors, say in the Middle Ages, where they just marry bands of actors, like, we'd love to put on a morality tale for you. Do you have some bread and broth for us? I mean,
morality tale.
But that's what they would do, these plays where they would teach you.
Is that the same as minstrels, like wandering minstrels?
Yeah. But basically, they had to, or like a court gesture. Mm-hmm. Their job was staying alive each day, like only piss the king off to a certain point.
Well, and then this goes back even further if you want to get into our evolution, which is we have this uncanny capacity to remember stories and tell stories because we didn't have the written word for so long. And our culture is what makes us successful as an animal, right? We've given up so much of our brain space so that we can learn, right? We don't come out of the womb. We can't do a goddamn thing. We got to learn how to do everything. So we have to have a way to convey all this information. So we have this crazy capacity for stories. So people have been acting out stories forever.
But you could also make the argument we are using our whole brain because up until just a few thousand years ago, well, not even less than it, we spend most of our day going, don't die.
Oh, yeah.
Stay warm, have shelter.
Avoid the guy with the boils on his face who seems to be dying right
So
now.
each day was survival. And I mean, the people crossed mountain ranges wearing one blanket. And so every day was a new adventure in living.
Yeah.
And we're in a constant state of homeostasis, as they say. I mean, our biggest problem as a culture is trying to stay thin.
Yeah. Are you ever driving? Do you drive up to Washington ever?
I have many times.
Right.
But with kids, we haven't as much.
Okay. I'm still doing it. I'm a glutton for punishment. So we just drove to Oregon over Christmas, right? Always when I'm driving through Grants Pass, I think it is, the tall pass between Oregon and California, I think. Jesus Christ, man. Coming through here in a fucking wagon with no roads. How did they do it? I can barely get through, and if I got the kids in the car, if it's snowing, like you're starting to think, I'm stupid and irresponsible. I should have flown up. Why have I put my family in this situation? And we have airbags.
Yes.
I mean, what would you feel like as a dad going, fuck it, man, I'm going to go out to California. You guys are coming with me. How many times on that trip where you're like, I'm the worst human being ever. Look what I'm putting my family through. We're going to die.
Yeah.
Also, I could find some gold out there or something.
Yeah. Or, you think about all of our especially Irish and
you're Norwegian
and Irish.
Boy, but you fucking look it too.
Thank you.
You really do.
So my great grandfather left. He was the Norwegian part of where a bunch of Norwegians live in Finland. He left that. He went to Ellis Island. His last name was Smidgerbakken.
Oh, great.
And they went.
Start.
They went. No, and they were like, "What's your last name?" And he's like, "Jackson." And just think about not only I'm leaving where I'm from, I'm leaving my family. I have no money. Oh, and I don't even want my fucking last name.
Yeah.
It's over. I am starting so new. And what did he do? He moved to fucking Juneau, Alaska. Which at that point...
Why leave fucking Finland to go to Juneau, Alaska?
Because they had gold and fish, and you could start a life, and that was when the gold... the companies that are running the gold mines there, they would just kill the sheriff if they got any trouble from him.
Sure, they had the leverage.
Yeah, and I just remember thinking, my grandfather went to some sort of frontier shootouts, and he was like, just go fishing. And
did he journal? Or is there any
no?
That's a bummer. Wouldn't that be great to read his fucking journals of Juneau, Alaska?
That's
I wonder if he took on an Inuit lover at any point or a Inupiat lover.
That's exactly what I jumped to. Yes, he did.
I wonder if he was ever invited into an igloo, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, there's no igloos in Juneau.
In Juneau? How do you know? You don't know
because Juneau is much further down. It's almost.
I didn't invite you here for a geography lesson.
Just because it's the one thing you don't know about, doesn't mean
I have to be the smartest person.
Juneau is way down.
Okay.
It's midway through British Columbia. British Columbia is a province of Canada.
Here we go. Your mother's Canadian. Is this why you're fancy yourself a Canadian? I think people are largely aware of it, but I just want to make a personal attestment to it. You're a beast. You're a very imposing physical beast.
Well, I did forget
you're
that I was
one
doing
of the
this
few
today.
actors
I was in the gym.
Yes, you were. So backstory, Joel was going to be here at 10:30, and I thought around 10:10. What's a gentle way to just remind him? I don't want to accuse you of having forgot, but I thought...
Absolutely, you should accuse me because this is a conversation I have with my wife daily.
But I don't know you well enough to know whether if you're like the Rock of Gibraltar, if I can count on you. I don't know that side of you yet. So I thought, I'm just going to do a gentle... It doesn't seem like I'm saying, hey, remember... so how did it come off? Because I think I said, hey, if you get confused, just give me a ring.
It came off exactly like... This is a very polite way to remind me that I'm doing this today and not next Friday. But I can't, we have a scheduled spring break and we booked flights, all that. And then Sarah the loveliest person.
Super gorgeous.
You have no idea how lucky I am.
Yeah,
and she's so wonderfully responsible and an adult. She goes, "Hey, genius, it says you're going to San Antonio in the middle of our spring break." And I was like, let me get into that. Let me get into it. This is a constant.
Do you overcommit?
Oh, yeah. It's an actual problem that I need counseling on. It's like I'm constantly being electrocuted and I can't open my hand.
What do you think that stems from? Is it codependency, or is it like just an eternal optimism that everything will work out?
I think the competitiveness and aggressiveness of the business that we've chosen, when you first are young here, and I arrived here when I was 29, which now I look back and that's basically 14 to me.
Did you feel like you were playing catch up because you had arrived 11 years later than most people?
Yes, and I didn't know the rules. There aren't any rules. You go into it, and when it starts working, you're like, right, you just got to keep going, and you fill up the whole thing. You work your ass off, and then in the last 2 years, Community and the Soup and Great Indoors were all canceled. I mean, Community kind of reached its end, and we ended the streaming service of Yahoo Screen. We went 6 seasons, but I basically didn't have a job, so I was like, well, let's go hit the stand up route, and I started booking stand up, and my wife was like, you gotta ease off. You got a 9 and a 13-year-old, and I'm like, right. All right, let's go throw the football. Great. Let's go back in. You want to go get some shoes? And which is not healthy. And because at the end of your life, you're like, yeah, you really entertained those folks in Edmonton that one time, but you could have.
But you weren't there for your kids' soccer game. That weekend.
But I'll be there he's playing football tomorrow. So one of them is. So it's going to be great.
Oh, that's a juicy topic.
It's flag football.
Okay, there's no head-on-head.
Yeah, but I had 7 concussions on the skull.
Well,
I'm not an idiot and riding a motorcycle, right, Dax?
But do you shut the fuck up? Don't you dare!
Whoa, we're gonna fight
motorcycles. Do you? I think about this a lot lately. I think I'm 43. What are you? 45.
46.
46.
Monica's 13, and Rob
is 22.
Correct.
Yeah. But I think early in my career, I was so hungry because unlike you, I did come here early, but I had 10 years of auditioning, never got a fucking thing. So when I had an opportunity, like jump through that plate glass window, you got it, I'll do it. And then I was, but that's not the most appealing personality type to maintain anything for a long time. So I've had to really kind of think about that a lot. So,
but you probably do the thing where you're like, I'll figure it out later. But right now I'm jumping through this plate glass window.
Yes. Well, again, what was super helpful is to marry Kristen, who has a completely opposite a train of thought on all topics. And she's been good at gently pointing out, like, these fight stories you tell, it's not people's favorite part of you. And I'm like, oh, really? That's interesting. Because where I'm from in Michigan, these are good stories.
These land.
Yeah. He's like, no, people don't want to feel like they're around someone who might just get physical with other people. It's not a comforting thought. As much in my mind, I'm thinking, this would be so comforting for everyone to know that I will confront the guy if he comes through the door. It's the opposite reaction. I want to ask really quick, because you said you listen to books, and I too listen to books. And do you feel guilty when you admit that you actually listened to that book as opposed to read it?
Oh, people will shame me by going, you didn't read that book, you listened to it. And then I will say, I'm 4 inches taller than you. What are you going to do about it?
That's nice. That's a good retort.
So I'll be like, it's worked out. Do you want to head to the tennis court that I own? But I now, like, for a while with, like, when I started the Soup back in 2004, I was so anxious because I can't really read, and all I had to do, and I had to read teleprompter.
Well, so right, we're both dyslexic.
Yes,
right, yeah.
I repeated grades. I would, they literally diagnosed me with slow starter. So my sons are also dyslexic. One of them's being diagnosed, and the doctor goes, and she's describing all the symptoms, and I was like, that's what I have. And she goes, oh, I was wondering which one it was because it's passed down. And then I said they told me I was a slow starter, and she just
What does that even mean though? Slow starter?
I don't know.
Stupid.
She put her head down. She goes, I cannot believe someone called some kid stupid.
That's what it is. It's a euphemism for stupid. Slow starter.
Yeah, and my dad would always, because my dad clearly has dyslexia, he would never really admit it for a long time, but he'd always say, like, not bad for white trash from Chicago. Right. My dad also worked his ass off and did well. And so, and I was
does he jumble a ton of words? Does he like mispronounce people's names and stuff?
No, but he can't remember names just like I can.
Yeah, I can't either.
I mean, Betsy and
you've done a great
Bill,
job
Betsy
so far.
and Bill, yeah.
today.
If it's just two people, I'm fine. Like I did a stand-up show in Columbus last weekend, and I have a cousin who lives there. And I texted my mom. I was like, "Do you know which show Mary's coming to?" And she goes, "Jane, your cousin of the last 46 years?" Yeah, she's going to the first show. I'm like, great. Because my mom was a newspaper editor, and my dad was very smart to marry somebody who could edit everything,
handle all the the reading and writing.
When Audible.com came on, were you like, thank you, Jesus?
Well, I weirdly, what's interesting is I did not learn to read till 5th grade, but then I did develop a super passion for reading around like my senior year in high school, and then I just read super slow. Right. But I did learn. I loved reading. I really got into books on tape because of my insomnia. So I started listening to these McCullough books, these dense historical books that are so mind-numbing with detail. They would put me to sleep. So now, that was about 3 years ago. So now I've listened to like 100 books because it's what puts me to sleep.
So you found out you were dyslexic because of your son?
Yeah. Well, it was everyone knew.
But you thought you were a slow starter until
years. I was just like, right. And I kind of took that philosophy. My whole thing was, because I cheated all through high school and college.
Oh, you did?
And I was always like, I'm just going to figure out how to get good grades without having to work. Because I can't read it. I can't read the material, but I'm just going to cheat and I'll figure it out.
Were you good at math?
So interesting.
I was very good at geometry. I aced all that stuff. And strangely, the only science class I ever did well in was physics. Because it's all spatial stuff.
Right. You could visualize.
So I can go,
stuff.
Right, and so I loved physics and geometry. I tanked algebra. But I always figured, my whole thing, approach to education was, how do I figure out the system? And then once I figured that out, then I could be like, this is how I'm going to get better grades than I should be getting.
I would imagine, though, do you have a crazy memory for auditory stuff, like things you heard, right? You can hear a story and it's fucking there.
So, yeah,
right?
in college, I took as much history as I could because I loved the history, and there was a number of lecturers where I could just listen to the lecture, I would get it, and then I knew I could just write it down in a test. But when I would get these, they were like, here's 18 books for you to read, and I'd be like, I'm not going to read any of these. I remember classes where they would present the books and I would just drop the class.
Oh, you would?
Yeah, but these other guys would go, strangely though, like I had to do research where I would, they would be like, you cannot use textbooks. You can only use old newspapers. And I had an okay time. I think there were so many pictures and visual stuff that I could read old newspapers very quickly.
But what's cool is growing up, we think like, oh, we're fucked, right? Everyone's clearly reading.
Well, and people
they're
tell
doing
us
all
we're
this shit.
fucked.
Yeah. In the grades would suggest that we're fucked early on. But you don't realize you are developing this superpower, which is this memory for things you've heard, which then, as someone who improvs a lot and is off the cuff, like this is your greatest weapon, is that you have this crazy database, right, of little clips in your head that you can draw up pretty fucking quickly.
Yeah, it's scary when you meet someone like, I don't know, like I'm just when this friend of mine who has named Drew Hansen, and he's in the state legislature in Washington, Rhodes Scholar, Harvard. He can read anything at the fastest you've ever seen, and he's got the insane memory. And I'm like,
oh, really,
Drew, you need to run for president.
Yeah,
because
you've
people,
got
everything.
When they read a book, in my experience, they just don't retain nearly as much as probably when you read a book or when I read a book. Because we're going so fucking slow.
Yes.
It's
and when
really
having someone read it to me is
I love it.
Yeah, it's I whenever I exercise or drive, I don't listen to music nearly as much as I used to, because I'm reading all the books that I should have read. I'm reading all of Dostoevsky, and I was like, oh, this is the stuff I would never have read.
Did you read Crime and Punishment?
Yeah.
Oh,
amazing.
What a fucking book! The way he can relay what people think is unparalleled.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
I read The Gambler,
and
which is
apparently an anti-Semite, which is the unfortunate
well, you just got
part.
it. You're going to have to overlook that. Henry Ford as well, but we got the car out of the guy. So
Monica is like,
people.
what the?
That's a big topic that would be worth talking about. But
let's do it.
here's my thought.
And now
There's a lot of movements that basically the end result of these movements is people are gone. They're kind of just put out to Siberia, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I don't think we ever calculate what cost are we going to pay now for this. So we're going to punish this person who might have a ton to contribute to society. Henry Ford, right? The guy that's despicable. He was an anti-Semite. He was a supporter of Hitler. This is all bad. But his net result on society is still so positive, right?
right.
But we live now in a culture where if Picasso was among us and we found out Picasso had done something dodgy, we would just get rid of Picasso. He would be banished, right? He would never be allowed to create anything. And then we would be denied all that. So it's just an interesting.
I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument that so in Michael Jackson's case, obviously,
let's talk
he
about
went
him.
to court for possible molestation. He was cleared, and I think obviously big fans are like he was ruled innocent, and
Sure.
but you could also
Not in the civil cases, though, right?
no,
He was
and
paying
yeah,
out.
and you that whole thing about being able to identify marks on his penis.
That's seems like a what do you call it in a court case? I mean, that feels like open and shut.
Yeah,
If you can describe,
right, and so you go, yeah, but his music still gets played. Obviously,
as it should, because I don't know why the world should be punished because he had this terrible aspect to his personality. Why should we all be denied this amazing music that spreads joy and makes everyone dance and is happy? It's just I
don't know. When I listen to it, I'm like, oh boy.
You can't enjoy Michael Jackson.
It's hard
because
for me to. I mean, that was such a public case. And, but then you read about John Lennon, and Julian Lennon, his older son, has said he would never have kids because he never would ever want them to have the same upbringing that he had. And I was like, oh. That is painful.
And did that lower your enjoyment of his music?
It does when people go like, isn't he the greatest? And I was like, he's not the greatest father. At least that first round was no good.
Right. Mm-hmm. But that's my issue is that for, I guess what at least how I feel like what people are saying is, unless someone is entirely perfect across the board, then
Absolutely.
any great thing is null and void. And that's just,
it's just not-
Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King had orgies that were recorded by the FBI. Had those come out in that day, he probably would have been silenced. Would we have denied ourselves the civil rights?
That happened?
Yeah, all these tapes were made public a few years ago. So you could fucking John F. Kennedy. He had sex with a virgin in the White House pool. That would probably be
The White House has a pool?
That was my biggest shocker too. She was making the rounds on she did a 60 Minutes thing. She had been waiting for Jackie O to die to tell her story, but she basically was a virgin and got hit on by him and some staffer, and they went into the pool and they had sex in the pool. And, that's a dodgy situation. So,
that sounds really dodgy.
It does. But all things aren't equal here. I think the level of pain and injustice is different.
But let me just ask you, if there is a man that has the cure for cancer in his basement laboratory and he hates everyone and he uses the N-word at breakfast, are we going to punish ourselves because he has that side of himself? It's just, to me, it's like the opposite of the utilitarian philosophy, where it's like,
who's at the breakfast?
You're gonna have to fucking tolerate some shit if you want the upside of some of these people.
That's true, but cancer, which saves people's lives, is different than looking at paintings. I don't think so. I don't think you can say that the value that Picasso added to world history or that Michael Jackson's added is not commensurate with some scientific breakthroughs. Joel, please.
I think it's the same thing. It's the same sort of theme of somebody who contributes something great to society who's despicable in a big way.
Yeah. The point is, can we handle that? Are we big enough to acknowledge, yeah, that guy's a fucking scumbag, but I gotta say, no one plays the violin like him, and that's worth having in schools so kids can learn violin.
Yeah, I mean, I do think now that sort of behavior is hard to hide.
Yeah.
And obviously Ford was open about it, but now it's way harder to keep like behavior like JFK's because of I think of having so many, thank God, women reporting in news. That stuff all changed, so now it's going to be different.
Yeah, look, I've floated this opinion out loud at parties, and people are quick to say like, okay, well, what if it's your daughter who's blank, you know? And I go, yeah, well, that is terrible. But there's got to be another solution other than guy with cure for cancer, you're in Siberia. How about he's not allowed around women or whatever? Any number of practical, pragmatic solutions to this stuff where we still allow the one good thing about the person to be nurtured or supported, you know? I don't know. I think it's tricky.
Well, it does get to that weird thing. You're like, yes, it's just like, oh, but society has benefited from this car thing, or has it?
The ozone or in the
sure. I mean, other than that, and we're slowly baking ourselves. But yeah,
but I think you'd be hard pressed to go through history and everyone we hold up if they had lived in the era of Twitter and whatever else. I don't think we'd have many people on Mount Rushmore, you know. And then so what would we be left with? Like our moral superiority that we punished everyone who wasn't perfect.
Right. Absolutely. It's a weird. It's once you get into the weeds of it, it's very difficult.
I want to ask you, if being labeled a slow starter, what impact do you think that has had on your, full adult life?
No, I decided not to pursue pop music. I always thought I'm going to show them. I fought it, and I thought I know how to get around, and so I always was figuring out ways to get around stuff. I mean, I knew I was good at sports, and I knew I loved acting and performing. So I really dove into that, and school always became secondary. And I knew that I was I could tell jokes in class, and that always did well.
But again, what's the chicken and what's the egg? Because the egg, Christopher Walken all of a sudden.
Hi.
I developed, I think, at least a sharp sense of humor in response to being the fucking dum-dum who was being let out of the classroom. So do you think that's the root of...
Like the days that the spelling bee would come up, like, I'm not going to be able to spell any of these words. And then, then it would be fun to make a joke out of it.
Right.
And I could make people laugh. And they would still think I was the dumb kid, but... but I always excelled in sports, so I knew I had advantages there.
It is nice to be crushing in at least one department.
That really gave me like confidence,
all
and
your self-esteem. Yeah,
but I didn't ultimately care. It was that thing where I probably missed out on some good education, but I was thinking, oh, well, if I can't do it, I don't want it.
It's stupid.
It's dumb. I did a lot of that. And I went to college. I definitely should have not gone to college.
And you went to UW, right? That's a hard school to get into.
Right, but my grades were pretty good. My SAT scores were a disaster. So what I did begin, I think it took me a long time, was... There was this year to go to acting classes and stuff like that. And you're like, this is how you do it. And I realized I was like, oh, I can only use 20 to 30% of this information. I have to take stuff that I can use and throw everything else because it's not useful to me.
Right.
So when I began to kind of think for myself and go like, oh, here's how I can accomplish this to my certain level of accomplishment, or that I can do, whether it's like telling jokes or something, that really kind of helped.
Oh, 100%.
To know I know my skill set here, and this is what I think I can do.
But I think the athlete part is really key. That's a great source of you fit in with a bunch of guys on teams, I'm assuming,
and you learn what you're good at.
Right, you're excelling. You're better at something than other people. I think that's a great well to have. If you're lucky.
And when you do well, it helps.
But do you have at all? I have. This is a terrible side of me. Is I'm a fucking know-it-all in response to thinking everyone thinks I'm a dumbass. Do you have that?
First of all, knowing you a bit, not too much, but I've never gotten that feeling. I never got there's the insecure guy that has to prove that he's smart.
Oh, good.
All I thought was Dax is one of those kind of cowboy, rogue, smart guy, other sort of freakonomics type of alternative.
Can I use that for my bio? Do you mind?
Sure. That you go he's a motorcycle expert. He can race cars. He's clearly smart in ways which typically smart people or typically seen smart people would run screaming and crying from. So that I've never felt you try to, but I'm sure there was.
Oh, in my 20s, I think I was insufferable. It was so important to me that you understood I was not a dum-dum.
That's
and it really, I think I was real tough to be around. I think people would agree.
When did you feel like you became easier to be around?
Well, I think, getting sober helped. And I also think being around Kristen helped a lot. And I think just generally getting some fucking self-esteem along the way.
You didn't have like growing. I mean, clearly you were a good athlete. You excelled at different, like obviously the motorbike sports.
Well, right. So that's
the fact that you're not dead or completely mangled is amazing.
Yeah. I do have a theory that when I will die and then I'll get to heaven and I'll go, oh, it finally happened. And they'll go, oh, that's so cute. You think this is the first time you died. You died there in 1989. You died. Like, it could be a fun reveal that, like, we die a bunch of times. And then they finally, like, whatever. Who cares?
What?
I don't know. This is totally not worth going into.
You believe you've actually died before?
I don't believe I'm going to heaven or there is a heaven. But I just play a fun game where I get to heaven and I go, oh, that's pretty good. I made it to 72. I was expecting to die at 62. And they go, oh, no, you did die at 62 and you died at 46. And then, that motorcycle accident, you died. People don't live from that. You thought you lived?
And you're like, so you feel like it's
they just keep you around till you learn some lessons.
In this story, an angel grabs the motorcycle with you on it and goes, whoa, buddy boy, let's just
no, they'll show you that, oh, you were dead. Like you were dead.
Oh, and then
you
physically died.
Yeah, and then they just woke you up. Yeah, and they're like, no, you survived this crazy car accident.
I look forward to your book.
Whenever we're talking about like what we hope our daughters will leave the house, like whatever, if we could impart one skill. I know you have two gorgeous gladiator Viking sons. Well, they're really good looking and I think they'd kill each other, right, if you let them.
Which
is I think is going to serve them well in life.
My brothers and we killed each other.
Yeah, same here. But if I had to pick just a single thing that they left the house with, forget whatever kind of self-motivation we could bestow to them, I would want them to exercise. Literally, if they did nothing else,
they could be horrible, awful people.
They could be terrible in school. They could be all these things.
Ford anti-Semites.
Yeah.
But as long as they hit the gym.
They could be burning crosses in the front yard. No, but if they left the house and they exercised 3 times a week, I would be most happy about that, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
Because this all relates to you. Don't worry.
So you'd be like, Lincoln, I'm sorry about the 6 divorces you've had, and
but I know she'll be happy because I do think exercise is a huge source of happiness. Because, and again, I have nothing to support this theory. I do think for the bulk of time humans lived here, we spent, as you were talking about, we spent a big portion of our day being physically active, gathering food or actively hunting. And you were rewarded for that work with serotonin. And now we're all sedentary and we have jobs where we don't do anything physical.
Yeah.
And that's why you have pandemic depression in this country, I feel like. Also, in England, several years back, they stopped treating people with mild depression with pharmaceuticals, and they started the NHS or whatever that national health system is called.
Run around.
They will pay for them to go to a gym 3 days a week because they've found that has better results in treating mild depression than pharmaceuticals. So you have this gift. You work out nonstop, right? To my knowledge,
I'm working out right now. I am just flexing down below. I'm doing Kegel exercise.
Okay, great. You have the most powerful Kegels in the business, they say.
He was so well known for it.
But you have this. Have you ever recognized that this is a gift you have? That like you were into athletics, and then you, for whatever reason, you've kept that going. Do you acknowledge that might be a big building block of your own self-esteem and your own happiness?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's I do find it rather. I mean. There's a selfish part of it, obviously, because you want to look good and you want to not.
We're vain.
Yes, and you're like. Maybe you could go to a soup kitchen and help out downtown sometime. Got to hit the gym for 40 minutes. That's all I got.
Got to measure this salmon out before I eat it.
How do I look? Great. And so it's very kind of narcissistic in that way. But the other side of it is keep moving because most American people our age, not your guys' age, but
13 and 22.
13 and 22. You guys are getting high school credit, junior high school credit. Is that not our parents, but our parents before, by the time they were our age, I mean, there was enough cigarettes and whiskey and not moving around for the most part. They were like, that was it. And no, as you said, the endorphin rush, all that stuff is. I feel like if I don't exercise, then
because clearly you've had periods where you're working too much and you can't. Right? Have you had long layoffs of working out?
And then cut to me in my trailer doing push-ups. Going, I need to do 200 push-ups.
Yes, you have a very regimented diet, and that's the vanity part.
It's the Jimmy Kimmel starvation diet.
Oh, you're on that one day a week. You fast.
Oh no, I do 3 to 4.
You fast 3 to 4 days.
Today I haven't eaten.
And you're not going to?
And I won't eat till 8.
Oh my God. How does this not fuck up your metabolism? I feel like this has to lower. Don't you go into starvation mode?
I have more energy on non-eating days than I do on eating days.
That's no testament to what your metabolism's doing, is it?
I feel like
you're a hummingbird?
No, human beings did not constantly feed themselves.
Well, that's very true.
And we now live in a society where we have access to food all day, all night. And that just was not the case.
And I feel bad for us. I watch these nature shows with the girls, and you see what a fucking bear will do to get a seal, right? Yes. I mean, it'll kill itself to get a seal. And you go, oh, we have that same hard wiring. So I'm very sympathetic to, like, we're nearly defenseless against that. You know, if you see what we'll do to get a piece of meat, of course we're fucked.
Yeah.
Wait, what is the diet? Can you break down the diet?
It's not really that difficult. I mean, it's not. I mean, I can break it down. It's just
tell us.
How many days?
I do 3 to 4, usually 3 a week, where I'll have a dinner and then I don't eat until dinner the next day.
Really? Mm-hmm. And then when the dinner's what? It's responsible as well?
Well, the thing you never can...
How are you keeping on this much muscle mass? Because you're guys, the physique is off the fucking charts. The chest...
it's literally at the gym. I literally zipped over from the gym.
The chest is bulging. The biceps are vascular and powerful. Do you take like supplements to keep the mass on?
No.
I would just imagine
vitamins and Propecia.
We are virtually
the same person.
I mean, you're more imposing physically.
That is not true.
But the dyslexia and the
we could be from the same tribe.
The cheating. I only cheated in Spanish. I'm honest.
Really?
I could not pass Spanish, and you had to have it to get into UCLA, and I just had to fucking cheat. I had tried it and it failed 3 times, and I was like, okay. I got to print up a little tiny piece of paper and bring it to the test. And I did.
Oh, yeah. The scratch paper was the best way to cheat.
And I actually...
because you could write all the answers out.
I didn't feel guilty at all either. I left going like, I did what absolutely needed to be done.
Yeah. I mean, it's essentially wrong. But in mine,
of course.
I did, as we already talked about, I was like, ugh, I can't do this, so I hate it. So I was like, so it doesn't matter what I do to get by. And this is why I should have just gone straight to... a conservatory for acting or something, or done something else.
Now, you did play college football, right? Is that
yes, but not.
You were a walk-on, right?
Yeah, so
I don't even know what that really means.
There are some teams have you can just join a team, and they're like, okay, put these pads on. We'll see how you do at practice.
Okay.
And some guys would be there.
This is the Rudy story, basically, right?
Yes. But some guys you could see them. They'd show up and they would be, and then one practice and they'd leave. That would be it. Oh,
okay.
And I stayed for 2 years.
But you were the good-looking 6'4" Rudy.
Thank you.
What were you
balding,
when you were in college? What were your dimensions? What did you weigh? You were a tight end?
Tight end, and I remember getting on the scale naked, and I was 245.
God damn. For real?
Yeah, and I had 6% body fat.
Oh, my God. Were you doing steroids or anything?
No. Oh, no.
You weren't?
No. If you...
what do you weigh right now?
216, 218, around
245 of muscle?
Those were the...
What were you eating, 6 or 7 steaks for breakfast?
I was eating nonstop.
You were?
And because you were practicing twice a day, and you were lifting weights, and on top of doing school and all that stuff.
I'm so intimidated.
And I was bad. I mean, I was
You ate cookies and stuff?
We ate... Yes, I ate. It was... You're also young enough that you can eat anything.
Yeah. Would you go to Sizzler?
No, come on.
Oh, I would.
Unless I would like to. I would go to Denny's. No, there wasn't a Sizzler near my school.
Are you the voice of Denny's?
I would like to be.
Okay.
And Sizzler. No, but there was but the 2 guys ahead of me. There was also other guys ahead. So I was like, I was the funny guy on the sideline.
Okay, that's a good role to have, though.
Yeah, I killed at skit night. I mean, the respect the players gave me after skit night.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, all right.
When did you meet Sarah? Wait, after college?
No, I met her once when I was a freshman in college, and she was a senior.
Oh,
I was walking home from football practice, and we had a mutual friend at 2:45, hunched over because I had just ran into enormous men for 2.5 hours. And Sarah's first, she was Kim O'Neill, who was our mutual friend, a woman I went to high school with, and a close friend of Sarah's. It just happened they do, and she introduced us, but she was like, who's that guy who looks like he's injured and slumped over and with the worst posture
who's that old young
she's
man
ever seen? And then I didn't really meet her until 3 years later.
But prior to meeting her, when you're on the football team and you're a big stud and you're funny, do you have an appetite for ladies in those first couple of years of college?
Not really.
Really?
I wasn't that guy.
You weren't. How do you explain that?
I just so I was in a fraternity for 3 or 4 horrible months. I met one guy I really liked, but I was not that. I just these parties would happen at I would always I gotta get out of here. I was just disgusted with the scene, and I was like, pretty. This is and I know that some people love it and good. I guess good for that, but it just was. I would always be like, I'm going to, and I just spent a lot of time in church. So
you did?
Yeah,
I grew up Catholic or something.
Grew up Catholic, but then I became a Presbyterian, and to this day I still am.
You converted yourself in college from Catholic to
in
Presbyterian?
high school. Yeah, my parents were thrilled.
Yeah, that's a weird act of rebellion.
It is.
Yeah,
there was a lot.
I'm
going
no longer
on.
eating the sacrament, guys.
Yeah,
I'm
and now I see it symbolically, and it is no
very
longer
weird. Did you have a good friend who introduced you to their church, and you're like, hey, check out my church camp, and then it bit you? Because you do recognize most kids are just trying to avoid church altogether. They're not. They're not searching out another church.
I still to this day, when it's Sunday morning, I'm like, ugh, church.
But then you go.
Then I go, but then a couple friends would take me to a mega church, which I hated.
Okay,
people see, we can dance. I was like, nope, not doing that. I loved the ritual of the
this
Catholic
is too
church.
fun. I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah, I was like, oof,
it should be suffering.
I was like, these people are standing and jumping up and down, their arms are in the air. I hated all that.
Okay,
how
did you find your own church though?
It was like the Presbyterian church was kind of a happy medium.
Oh, okay. But did someone introduce you to it, or were you just kind of cold calling?
In college, there was one across the street,
and you just walked in because it was close.
It was close. There was I knew a lot of people that it was, the campus. It was quite a mixture of folks. So I knew they were going there, and
you were just bored with the Catholic Church.
No, I disagree. I mean, I really think they do need to have women priests. And, that just should be a thing.
Sure,
I always disagreed with that, and but I always liked the ritual. It's an ancient ritual. And, But my brother is an Episcopalian priest, and so
he is.
So he basically, you go right up to almost being a Catholic, but then you can marry and have children.
That's healthy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so my wife, she went to that Presbyterian church, so so I was like, oh, we'll do that.
And when you were shopping for a girl, was it important to you that she was also religious?
Yeah, probably. Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Because it helps to have that common.
Because you're going to raise kids together, and obviously you're going to want to raise them with that belief. And
and I still got which people, when I tell them, they're like, "What?" But you say "fuck," and I go,
I'm a little shocked by it.
Everyone's always shocked by it.
But I like it. Look, dude, I go to AA, which is not where I was hoping to go when I was growing up. So fuck it. I can't be very judgmental of any group that people join.
A church too, in a way.
Well, it's
higher power, baby.
We like to say it's not the winners club. It's not where all the winners congregate.
Oh,
it's not like people are like, I did it. Now let's join this group. It's pretty,
well,
you're at the lowest point a person can get.
Yeah, but it is the winners in that you made the decision to stop.
Sure. It ends up being a winners club.
You're not. I was walking with my 9-year-old to Starbucks from school. Starbucks, and it's this guy who was talking to himself. and limping along. He walked past us, and it said on it, he had clearly gotten, I don't know where he got it, but just said world-class junkie on his coat. And I was like,
that's pretty great.
I want to know that guy. But I was like, that's not the guy that went, I should probably stop doing this.
Right. Who knows? Maybe he's like 20 years sober. Maybe the other version of him was actually even worse.
Yeah. But it does show that when human beings can, like yourself, can get off that, it shows an incredible level of evolution and intelligence.
Well, to me, it becomes my. Do you listen to Sam Harris's podcast by chance?
No, I've never.
It's all I talk about. It's awesome. But he's a neurologist, and he is a proponent of this no self-will theory, right? He doesn't believe people really have ultimately self-will because you have so much biochemistry that's making so many decisions really for you, and a bunch of other things. All that to say, my kind of proof against that is my personal is like, oh yeah, I'm definitely bioengineered to be an alcoholic. I'm like, ninth generation. Everyone in my family ends up getting sober. I was molested. That almost guarantees you're going to be an addict. All those things would definitely guarantee that it was going to happen. But despite all that, you can kind of redirect. If you
so
have
then how does he answer for that?
I don't know. I gotta get in front of him.
Got to have been asked that question before.
I've yet to hear it raised, but it's what I always think when I'm listening to it. It's like, yes, you certainly are predisposed to all kinds of, a suite of behavior. But people are regularly breaking out of that, I feel like.
But
I mean, fuck me. Everyone has heard way too much about me.
No, but like a kamikaze pilot is doing something.
Yes, there's no way you're bioengineered to crash a fucking airplane, a Mitsubishi into the side of a
all
ship.
sorts of stuff that is counter to what to our health.
And listen, this guy's one of the smartest guys in the world. He would have tons of answers for us, but I don't know.
He would say something like they've been preconditioned and brainwashed to a point where
I think he just also means they're born into a circumstance. Like we don't choose some of these initial circumstances we're placed.
Well, weirdly, the kamikaze pilot might be a great example of how there isn't free will.
Right,
because why the fuck would someone choose to do that if
you have to volunteer? You had to be. No one was ever chosen to do. They had to volunteer.
Yeah, but
you could say the pressure to volunteer, but then you could say, why didn't every pilot in the Japanese Air Force do that?
Right, and then he'd say, because their testosterone levels were such that they would have never made that decision, thus proving that, had the guy been born with less testosterone, that wouldn't have been his destiny. So did he really have it?
That is
whatever. What I really want to know, though, from you is that you, because
go to
you're dyslexic.
I love Jesus.
And you came out here late. I want to know about the lows. So you had community, right?
Yeah.
When you were on Community in the soup, you must have been, your self-esteem's through the roof, right? You're like, I'm so gainfully employed. I'm not terrified anymore.
Yeah. No,
I can buy a house.
I was very, okay, it's working. And also I was spoiled on, especially, I had done 3 pilots that all never went anywhere.
Okay.
Before that. And but I didn't know the difference between, I was like, well, you do a pilot and you hope it gets picked up, and then it usually doesn't. And then one did. But then with the soup, because as you know, you audition for 1,000 different things, thousands of things, and I just counted it as like, well, here's another audition I'm going to today, and I'll do that, and there's that. And then when it got on the air, I never did a pilot. I did a 5-minute pilot presentation, and they went, great, all right, we'll try this out. And there was no launch, there was no nothing. So it was ultimately a very good way to get on TV, where they were like, we're going to put it on Friday night for 4 weeks, and we'll see. And so, and at that point, it was like, oh, it's on E, it's not on a Friday night. The world's not tuning in to the first episode of the second season of Lost,
right?
And so it was.
But you bring up a great point? I think there's a perception from the outside of Hollywood that we're actually choosing where we're going to end up,
no.
And that's just an illusion. Like I literally was in a final callback to replace the Blues Clues guy at the same time I was getting punked. Like it was going to go I was either going to be on Punked or Blues Clues. Whoever would have written the check
and you would have
taken, fuck yes, I would have.
You're taking
penniless for 10 years. I would have, I would have blown blue.
Yes,
to get on Blue's Clues. So I just want to point that out. That someone might think like, why did you do the soup, or why did you do Community? Why did I do Punk? Whatever, dude. You do whatever the fuck they throw your way, right?
Yes. When you find something when Community comes up, and I read that script, and it was one of the first pilot scripts. I was like, this one's really good. Yes. I know I can do this. Yes. This is the one I'm going after. I went and did a network test, and they were like, you didn't get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then Joe Russo and Anthony Russo and Dan Harmon is like, do you mind if you all executives leave and we're going to put them on camera and then you can watch that? And I sat around for another 4 hours. So
how nice of them. Aren't you grateful?
Yeah.
That
My gosh. I'm going over to Joe's house tonight.
Yeah. Sometimes people take that time. It changes your fucking life.
Yes.
Right.
They literally changed my life on that day. But I think people think, because like, well, you're married to a movie star. You're a movie star. You have a house that you can you like
you can demolish.
Right. It was like we showed up. I think my wife had a job, and that's why we could get an apartment.
Right.
I had no money, and I worked at Larchmont Wine and Cheese when I got here. So, which I love going into.
I love that place.
I made sandwiches.
Really good.
It was
sandwiches.
before
They're known
sandwiches.
for their sandwiches, right?
They are known for their sandwiches. They make a lot of
so good.
sandwiches. They're really good.
You're a part of that rich history.
I'm a part of yes. There are people that come along in your life that are cheerleaders and that help you.
Yes, and it's hard to accept help, isn't it? Because I'm starting embarrassed. Like I can only imagine if in your situation they're like, "Hey, you didn't get it." That's a terrible place to to do some more acting, right?
I rarely have ever read a role and they're like, "You got it." To this day it rarely happens. But that never. It was because Joe and Anthony Russo and Dan, I knew they were like, we want you for this, and we're going to fight it. We're going to fight as hard as we can.
That's so great. And
then like same thing with Gillian Jacobs when she came in. And she read, and we went, it's her. That's the character. It's perfect. It's so good. And the studio and the network was sending they were like, no, okay, it's not we don't read. And then they were sending all these other people, and we're like, it's her. And she didn't get the role until we were doing the table read, the first table read, which was kind of mean, and then very mean. And then at the table read, they're like, "Oh, by the way, you got it," and she just bursts out crying.
Oh my god!
I'm like, "Yeah, what is this poor girl?"
Yeah. And have you seen Love? Have you watched Love?
No, but if it's any
she's
consolation,
fucking great in that.
I haven't watched Love, Glow, or Atlanta.
Oh Jesus!
The only thing
you watch anything?
So when I had the flu, I got through the first 2 seasons because my friend said, "I'm going to stop being your friend unless you watch the first 2 seasons of Fargo."
Oh my God! How isn't it fucking awesome?
It's magical.
It is.
I was like, I can't. When I watch this episode, that means there's only going to be this many episodes left.
I mean, the addict in me is in a panic from the first episode. Because I'm like, it's so good. I can never get enough of this.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Every season.
Oh, it's incredible. I made the mistake of watching the 3rd season while I was editing Chips. And I just was watching the show and I thought, well, so they were basically given probably the same amount of money I was given for this film to do 10 episodes. And every episode is 10 times as good as any movie I've seen in the last 10 years. Like, this is just an embarrassment to the film industry, this show, because the set design's flawless. It's shot beautifully. Everything is so meticulously perfect. The music is perfect.
When she's singing to her kid in that one little scene in the 2nd season, that's the song that Holly Hunter was singing in Raising Arizona. I mean, that guy is a savant.
Noah Hawley, is that his name?
Yeah, but you could also, like, I remember Spielberg was interviewed 10 years ago, and he was like, well, I still haven't done a movie as good as The Godfather. And I was like, wow.
Oh, good. It's good to know, right? It's
good to know that everyone can take a shit on themselves.
Yeah. So did you have, because I had a big chip on my shoulder about coming off of Punk'd. I had this fear that everyone thought, oh, he's just a reality actor or whatever the fuck I thought, right? And did you have a hang up about being off of the soup when you started Community?
I never thought I would go into hosting. I had never planned on it, and I had never done it.
Right.
And then...
And you had to read a teleprompter.
And I had to read a teleprompter.
Terrifying.
But for the audition, I just memorized all the words.
Oh, smart.
So it didn't matter that it was even rolling.
Yeah.
And
how did you get comfortable with the prompter? Are you now comfortable with it? Or do they know how to do it for you? Like where they minimize the words or they make
there was it took me 4 hours to get through 20 minutes of jokes. When the soup first started. And it was I would ruin almost every setup. And if the punchline went really well and people were laughing, I would get anxiety because I'm like, don't mess up this setup.
Yeah.
And I would be very gingerly talking through the setup. And you could see our executive producer, KP Anderson, going like, he was like a dad trying, like seeing
watching
his
you
kid.
ride a bicycle.
Yeah. Yes. And like, okay. There you go. And, so there's always anxiety tied to it. And then the thing that helped me more than anything was starting to do the shows live.
Oh.
And so they were like, it's live. And
you had to do it right.
You cannot you will screw it up, which I did a lot. But then I was like, I'm going headlong into this and I'm going to say, I have dyslexia. I'm doing this show live. I don't know how it's going to go. That kind of dissipated it a bit. And then when I did, now I'm bragging, the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Never have I been more
By
nervous.
the way, what a scary job to take on. I applaud anyone who can do that. That's terrifying.
Yes, I was terrified.
I remember when you did it, I was like, fucking good on you, mate. That's a big swing.
I worked very hard to make.
I think I was at that one, weirdly.
You might have been.
I don't know.
I didn't. Did I see?
I've only gone once, but I feel like it was you. Yeah.
If
I mean, we
you
seem to be
remembered it that way.
living parallel lives, so why wouldn't I have been there?
Everything. Why don't I ride motorcycles?
I
Is
know.
the real
You
question.
do. That's the thing. But you'll hop on one of mine and you'll go, "Oh my god, I just know how to do this."
And then I hurt myself.
When you
Ryan
had to do
Hansen did, right?
No, he hasn't been hurt yet.
Oh,
Yeah. He
Yeah.
on a dirt bike excursion, which he had no business being on.
I saw it when I did his show. I was like, what are you doing?
You did that show. You didn't know Ryan yet, right?
No.
And then you're like, well, who knows what that fucking show's on? It's on YouTube Red.
Yeah,
Ryan
I read
Hansen
the script
solves
and it was so
crime.
funny that I was like, oh, this is great.
So that's awesome. I think when I heard that you had done that show, not knowing him, it made me like you even more. The fact that you would have taken the time to read it and go, oh, this, you know what, this deserves someone to support this.
I didn't think about support. I thought if the script's good, I'm going to do it.
That's a great edict to have.
Yeah, I was like, if it's funny, this will be funny.
You played Ryan.
Yes.
That's
why
he lost the role of his own show to you.
So this is how funny this episode was. So he's playing an actor that's playing a cop that is investigating crimes on television. That's the name of the show. And they decided because of low ratings, even though they pointed out it was on the internet, that it was on YouTube, that ratings didn't really matter, that he was fired. And I was hired as him, but in his
reality show.
Right, but in his contract, he had to appear in every scene.
Yeah.
So they cast him as an extra in everything.
In the Ryan Hansen
in his own
show.
show. And then in one scene, we're at a party and he's dressed in his party down outfit, which was he's like, oh, I can't believe this. He was like in
meta on meta.
Yeah, and people were like, hey, that's a really funny bit you're doing, how you're dressed as your old character. He's like, they just gave me this bow tie. It was,
So anyways, did you have a hang up about the soup? That's what I'm curious about.
Oh, so the hang up was at the time we're like, hey, this is working. Would you like, we'd like you to do red carpets. And I'm like, I'm not doing any of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, because you keep trying to feel out like, what's the point that I can't now return to being an actor, right? That's the fear.
Yes.
And if you're on a red carpet now, that you're getting even closer to probably never.
Now I'm interviewing the people that I would like to do acting with.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that. And they wanted to make that show daily at one point. I was like, we're not making it daily because then that's it.
Yeah.
They'll never act again.
Right.
So I resisted that. My thing was like, I want to do things that are not seen as hosting,
right?
So I can do both.
When you were doing press, though, I would imagine for the first season of Community, you're getting a ton of soup questions, right?
Yes.
And is that triggering you at all? Because that's where I would really be at my worst. Is like,
no, I was okay because I knew that's what it was working, and
right?
Who knows if this show was going to work?
Yeah,
and so I try, and E would always be like, well, he's going on another talk show to talk about Community. I'm like, don't worry. And every time I was like, the soup's going to come up 1,000 times.
Right.
And it did. And, so I didn't annoy me, but it was more like, yep, I totally love it. That's the thing I do. But this new thing I'm doing.
Yeah.
Wait till you see it.
Yeah.
But it was funny. Like even with Soup and Community viewers, they were kind of separate.
Right.
The Soup was women between like 20 and 40. And this, Community for a long time, and then it changed, was like men 14 to 30.
Oh yeah, so opposite.
Yeah, it was like weird, and then Community became much more universally kind of watched by not the world, but by men and women.
But I think people would be shocked, and even the few people we've talked to on here, I think people would be shocked about how fluid you have to be with your identity, with your what path you think you're on, how open you have to be if you want to find yourself employed in any capacity. There have been long periods of times where I'm not getting offered any acting jobs, and I go, oh, okay, I got to pick up my writing game, so I'll just write a ton, right? And then that maybe will yield something, then I'll end up acting again for a while, or I'll, So I think it's good that people realize you didn't sit down and map out this crazy trajectory.
No.
Which has ultimately landed with you owning a home, which is all really we're all trying to do, right? Is provide a place
Being
for our
solvent.
children to sleep. Yes.
And not
being
waking
in the black.
up, bolting awake at night going like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Yes.
I mean, I still do that.
Of course.
For the last year, I've been unemployed. And so.
Yeah. And that's what I want to know about is how, during that period, which is fucking terrifying, and you have a family, and Sarah no longer works, does she?
She sells her art, which does okay.
Oh, okay. So I didn't mean to in any way diminish Sarah's accomplishment. So in that period of a year where you have to be terrified, or unless you're not human, which you don't eat 3 days a week, so maybe you're not.
Yeah.
What are you telling yourself to comfort yourself? How do you navigate that year?
I go, well, I know how I can bring in an income is through stand-up.
Right.
So it's like, this is what I'll do on weekends.
Right. When you go do stand up on the weekends, are you doing a couple shows in a city?
I do 4 shows in a city. It's funny to see which city's like, oh, this city's not selling, you shouldn't go there. And then other cities like, yeah, it's been sold out for a month.
That's crazy, right?
It's very strange.
Yeah. And also you're getting kind of a real-time evaluation of your
Yes,
appeal regionally.
absolutely.
Which has got to be a roller coaster ride.
Well, like even being gone from the soup ended 2 years ago, and this new show came on, and people go, oh, he's copying Daniel Tosh.
Oh.
And I was like, wow, that's the length of memory.
The half-life of
you go, oh, no one even remembers I was ever doing 12 years of it on E. No one, it didn't even cross their minds. So that was crazy, because as you saw with some audiences, it fades away.
That's scary, right?
But then as soon as this new show got announced, like they went, yeah, Houston sold out, Dallas is sold out.
Okay.
Columbus sold out, and I was like, oh, well then what's how does it's so stupid and wonderful. But it's
when it rains, it pours.
Yeah,
and when it's
when it's not. So to your answer to your question, yes, a lot of insecurity of what am I going to do next?
Yeah,
and will I be able to provide? And am I moving back to Seattle?
Yeah,
and
does that manifest itself in that you're like rough to be around for Sarah? Is there?
I think it's rough in me leaving all the time, leaving on Friday morning and returning Sunday morning.
Yeah, and that's a lonely being on the road doing stand up. Yeah, is lonely.
No,
because you're married and have kids. So
I'm married and have kids. Well, I get on a plane and I sleep for the. However, and then I get to the hotel and then I take another nap and then I'm in front of people and then I go and then I'm right back on a plane back. So it's not like a road comic who's like, I got shows from Wednesday to Sunday.
Yeah,
and you're spending all day in some city you don't know. I love being in these cities I don't know because I can spend one day kind of looking around.
Wandering around.
And then like in Dallas 2 weeks ago, I was like, there's where Kennedy was shot. I've never seen that.
Texas Book Exchange, is that what is it?
The Book Depository.
The Book Depository.
And then they have the pool where he had sex with a virgin. So,
I don't think that's in Texas.
There's a whole museum to that.
He may well have had sex with a virgin in Texas, but that's not the one I was referencing.
Yeah. But it's like, even with this show, we've done 3. We have.
Tell me the name of your new show.
The Joel McHale Show with Joel McHale.
Oh, that's great. Let's get that name in there twice. That's what I want to close out on is I had a terrible head injury wakeboarding where I had amnesia for about 18 hours. And I now regularly obsess about the fact that I'm going to have CTE or whatever it's called. You played football.
Yes.
Are you terrified?
No, because I already had 7 concussions and a skull fracture before I played.
Oh, great. Football. So it's almost certain that you're going to.
It's fun. Yeah, I have to.
Yeah, do you think about it? And is there anything you can do to get screened? Or
there's nothing you can do, I don't think.
Right. It's just a degenerative brain condition, right?
They can't I don't think they can they die?
They must not be able to, because all these NFL players who commit suicide,
afterwards.
they donate their brains to that.
No, it scares my wife because I won't remember anything. But I said, this is how I've always been. But then I realized all those injuries happen. But football was different. I never actually got a concussion playing football, which is miraculous. But every day after football, I would feel slightly drunk.
You would.
I'd feel slightly like buzzed. Oof. And I was like, oh, right. That's what happens.
Oh, boy.
And
what were the 7 previous concussions?
Oh, a lot of me going, watch this. Oh. And that always
you would have said,
down,
hold my beer, but you didn't drink
jumping down flights of stairs. But the skull fracture, I lost. This. I didn't get amnesia, but I lost my short-term memory.
You did.
So I could not remember one thing to the next.
Yes. So I had that. I was on a loop. I was on a 5-minute loop.
Yes.
And do you have a memory of realizing in that state, oh God, do you know what I'm saying?
No, I remember going, something's happened.
What was the
I remember
injury?
going, because I remember going, there was just it's just photographs of the rest of the day.
Okay.
After the ski, because I have no recollection.
A skiing accident.
Yeah, I have no recollection because I collided with someone. This is what I'm told by Dave Johnson, who I went to high school with.
Can we trust Dave?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave, Dave was a very nice guy. He saved my life, basically, because then you realize when like a soldier gets blown up and they just wander into the battlefield and get shot because they don't know where they are.
Yeah.
Unless somebody goes like, "Hey, Phil, get down." And he was my Phil, and I remember. So this accident happened. He told me later on. He goes, "You stood up," and he stood up, the other guy, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." And I go, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes." And then we all skied on.
Oh boy!
And then I remember the day being gray and cloudy, and it was bright and sunny.
Okay.
Later on, and then David said I started talking really weird on it, and we're sitting on a fucking chairlift, and he's like, "We're going down," and then these flashes of me, I was like, why? I remember going, why is there a Coke in my hand? And
this is fucking, it's getting even weirder. Can I just say?
Crazy.
Because mine was wakeboarding.
What did you hit wakeboarding? Did the board hit you?
Still to this day, I don't know. I'm on my buddy Dean's boat, and he's got a buddy with him that I just met that day. So I don't know the other buddy, right? So Dean's driving the boat. I crash. It's a bad crash. I get into the boat, and they go, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yeah, I just feel like I got punched in the face pretty hard." And then I now Dean gets in to go wakeboarding.
So you have no real memory of the actual...
No, the actual impact. So Dean's buddy, who I just met that day, starts driving the boat. Now Dean's, on a 40-foot rope behind the boat. So I all of a sudden kind of come to on a lake, and I know I live in LA, and I'm looking at a stranger driving a ski boat, and I'm yelling to this guy, "Where the fuck am I?" And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "How am I on a lake? Who are you?" And so he realizes, okay, there's trouble. He stops the boat. Dean gets in. I do recognize Dean. They take me to my mother. We're driving to the hospital, and I say, "Why am I in Michigan?" "Oh, you're home for my birthday." "Okay. Why can't I remember that?" "You hit your head wakeboarding." And I go, "Okay." So it's like that episode of Gilligan's Island where you get hit in the head with a coconut, and I just need to get hit in the head with a coconut again. No laughing. I go, "That's pretty funny to say considering my head hurts. Have I already said that?" And my mom goes, "Yeah, honey, you've said that about 30 times. The same joke." And in that moment, I realize, oh my God, my brain's broken. And I start bawling. And I go, "I'm just so happy I'm with the 2 women who love me the most, so will make sure I'm okay." Because I was with my girlfriend and my mom.
Wow.
And then I'm crying, I'm bawling. And then I go, "Why am I in Michigan?" Make the same coconut joke
and
again.
You burst out crying again.
No, I only cried the one time. Once my brain unswelled, I remembered everything that had happened.
Do you are embarrassed that you wussed out like that?
Wussed out? What way?
Cried.
Oh, because I cried. Yes, I'm humiliated.
Like that?
No, in fact,
my parents did the opposite, which is they thought it was hysterical that I couldn't remember anything. My parents were laughing. They were like, because I walked in and be like, "Can I buy your turtleneck, Dad?" And he'd be like, "No. Ask me again, okay?" Can you believe this guy?
Can you
and
imagine
I'd walk
if your
right
kids
back
were
in
on
and
a
they're
loop?
laughing.
Can you imagine if one of your boys was on a loop?
My parents took me to a dinner party that night, and I am not kidding. I am so serious.
I believe you.
We were going to move to Minnesota, and my parents decided not to, and all the neighbors were going to throw a surprise party. My mom and dad And it was that they were just going to go over someone's house, but they didn't realize the whole neighborhood had gathered. And my parents were like, we can't go. Joel's fucked up his head. He can't remember anything. It's hilarious. And they were like, well, then they were like, okay, look, it was a surprise party. We're happy you're staying. Can you just bring them? And they did.
Okay.
And I went downstairs and played with this guy named Danny Rooney.
Oh my goodness.
And we played G.I. Joe for like 4 hours apparently. And I'm in like a 15-year-old at this point. And Danny, this little kid, basically
he can recognize.
He was just like, "What's going on with Joel?" He's repeating. It was like, "And here comes Cobra Kai again." And then I came out of it. How long did it take you to come out of the loop?
I probably hit my head at noon, and I was at the hospital. I had a CAT scan, and then things started becoming. I was starting to remember that day, and we left the hospital. It was like 1:30 in the morning.
Okay,
so I guess it was about 13 hours.
I just remember if I was alone skiing, I would have just skied off into
oblivion.
I would be somewhere in the Cascade Mountains, just fucking frozen somewhere. I mean, it would have been. That's the thing that was like, if Dave Johnson was, I was like, that was one of the most critical moments of my life where Dave saved my life.
Can I ask a question before we wrap up? Because it's for both of you.
Back to the Henry Ford stuff.
Yeah, racism.
Where we're at on the Henry Ford.
Yeah, no, because you guys both had this dyslexia, which would be considered probably a defect in some way, and then you both grew up to have these amazing lives and all these awesome things happen. Would you? And you look you look great.
Oh my God, you look so good.
This is going. I love this podcast.
So there's this CRISPR. Have you heard of CRISPR? It's like a genetic
gene editing.
Gene editing.
Oh, I thought you meant the stuff they put on lettuce that's getting old.
Oh yeah, no.
Here's the thing where you said dyslexia is a defect, which is not. That there was a reason why people were dyslexic way back when. Is that so? This perfect analogy that this psychiatrist did. So bees, they're all set up differently when they're born. And there's the worker bees, there's the queen, and then there's the bees that fly and go look for pollen. Mm-hmm. And when those bees come back and do that little dance, and those bees go like, that bee found all this stuff. We're going to that tree. We're going to that bush. We're going to that rhododendron, and we're getting all the pollen. We'll come back. The hive will continue to live. If you drip the drug, like ADHD drugs, on those bees that fly back, they stop leaving the nest.
Ooh.
And so that sort of scattered part of our brain that goes, well, ADHD or this, where we can't get it right. There was a reason for it. And they think part ADHD was probably like we needed scouts to go out and see, go see what there was.
Not sit in camp any longer and tell these stories.
Because if you were told, for the rest of your life, you're going to sit at a desk and you're going to do this one job, you would be like, I'm going to end my life because that's not something I could ever imagine doing. Or prison. So it's either this life or prison for people in our situation, probably.
Yeah.
Well, and there is a great chapter. Did you read in those Malcolm Gladwell books? There's a chapter on dyslexics. It was long known that people who were dyslexic had like a 2 times as likely to end up in prison, but wasn't known until recently is that you're also 2 times likely to be a CEO of a company, right? That was the part that they didn't know.
Right. So that's where I was going. If you could choose for your kids to have it, would you?
Yes. When we had girls, I weirdly found myself going, I think I'd want one of them to be dyslexic, weirdly. Or I'm left-handed, which is an impairment of some variety, I suppose.
I'm left-handed.
Get the fuck out of here. Little universes are not supposed to be happening at the same time.
But I throw right.
Me too. I throw right-handed and I kick right-handed. And
I kick right and I throw right.
But I eat left-handed and I write left-handed. And if I try to eat right-handed, I will stab myself in the eye.
That's what I brush teeth left.
Yeah, me too.
If I was like, if all my abilities were in one arm, then I could have played in the NFL.
Yes.
I was like, if I just...
By the way, if we were in the market for a wife swap, I can't imagine a better pairing for you and I.
Well,
we're both bringing a ton to the table.
But I'm worried about the pinworms.
Oh, yeah, she told that story on your show.
That's what because you were like...
you're cute when you can tell a fucking pinworm story in public and people still love you. I mean, if there was ever a test of her appeal,
she
talking
inspired,
about butt worms.
Yeah, she inspired the audience, including the president of Netflix, who was like, I had pinworms.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, he was so happy.
You were a loser if you didn't have butt worms.
That's basically what it was. People were like, I bet it's fun to itch there.
Yeah. Well, but in the backstory really quick, she was on your show and we was very honest about the family getting pinworms, right? The girls got it at school and then Kristen
it was based on the commercial we showed that a guy he sees a pretty girl and he sits down at a bench and he immediately jumps up and then it says got roids.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
But when what she probably left out of that story is that she goes, so the girls have pinworm, so that's why they've been itching their butt a lot lately. Does your ass itch? And I'm like, yeah, since I was born. Like, how the fuck would I know if I have? It's an anus, isn't it? Just itchy.
It's always.
Isn't it the natural state of an anus is to be itchy?
Yes.
It's foul. It's I always like to end on talking about itching our assholes, and I want to explore off
I've
air.
only had jock itch, and that was no fun.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was like. That's one of those things. Like, thank God I lived today, because all it took was a couple of applications of ointment.
Yeah, a little Lotrimin, some kind of an antifungal, and
or to this day, I'd probably just be like, it all just shriveled away because of jock.
You would have torn a hole and stuff.
I had strep throat back in November, and I was like, what happened to people who had strep throat? They're like, oh, they died a horrible, horrible death.
Right.
The infection went throughout them, and their throat just disintegrated on them, and it was a terrible death.
Yeah.
But now, take this little pack of pills, and you'll be fine tomorrow.
Yeah. You don't even have to skip the gym.
I didn't.
Well, Joel, I hope off air you and I will dedicate an hour to going out to lunch and figuring out even what more we have in common, because I feel like we've just scratched the surface today.
So the left-handed, we look the same.
We look the same. I mean, you're more attractive, but
that's not true.
You're a beast.
Then
left-handed, dyslexic, major concussion.
Yep, we both we love history.
Starting on, I guess you could say, a reality program, and then being accepted as an actor.
I bought a perfectly good house and completely ruined it.
We both have 4K TVs. We both like cars.
We both. Yep.
Yeah, we love cars.
We love driving. I'm not as bold as you to be able to drive motorcycles because. I don't have a death wish. Well, we're not going to die of old age.
No.
You're going to drop.
I'm going to zoom off a Mulholland.
Oh yeah,
riding a wheelie, screaming with a rebel yell.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to think at the age of 60, I'm going to be like, I can swim across that river. Anybody can fucking do that. Watch this. Goodbye.
Yeah, I have a similar thing too.
That's the problem.
The loudest voice in my head is the one screaming, "You're a fucking coward."
Yeah.
You have that voice?
I have the I bet you can't do that. Oh, you can't do that?
You fucking little coward.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Is your brother older?
I have two brothers. One older, one younger. The other one's an electrician. And
he reminded you of your cowardliness.
Well, he spends the day trying not to blow himself up. So I'm like, so he's
sure
a badass. When we remodeled the house and we reconnected the power, the guy, there was two guys on the pole, and the guy had the live wire, and he dropped it, and he hit the guy's shoulder. And there was a crack, and he was burned, and he was terribly electrocuted.
Oh my!
He lived, but I hope
that they found that you were liable for that.
Oh, I had them both killed before they left the cul-de-sac. And, but that's what my brother installs huge power. And I'm like,
he juggles chainsaws for a living.
Yeah, I go, how did it go today? And he's like, I didn't die. I made it through the day. So I'm happy.
And you're like, oh, they made me take 2 episodes of my show in a row.
Yeah, and
usually we crank them out in an hour 40, but for some reason.
Yeah. And I'm not eating that trough of scrambled eggs. I will order them separately, thank you. My life.
All right, for real though, I love you. Thank you for always being generous.
Thank
with your
you,
time.
and please watch the Joel McHale Show. With
honestly.
featuring Kristen.
And do those come out weekly, right? That's not a season dump like their normal model.
Well, yes, that's top.
So every day, every what day?
What day? 12:05 on Sunday morning.
For real?
Yeah. To which I said, now why exactly? And they went,
you don't need to know how the sausage is made. Just sell the sausage.
We know what we're doing. It's Netflix.
Yeah.
And they make $9 billion.
They have an algorithm that they realize they'll get 27% more viewers if it comes out at 12:05 instead of 12:04. And they're right.
They figured it out.
God bless them.
That's why they picked the show up for 45 episodes.
Please watch Netflix.
They did not.